Hi, I was Eric here. I was talking with famous people, and I want to talk about the tendency to battle. My own waning tendency to battle, but obviously not gone tendency to battle. So, as I just ended up battling a little bit with Beau, but I'd like to think that I really try in that situation. Okay, so Hami provides some actual answers. Hami says the status quo. But here's the problem with that as a criterion, Hami, is we have lots of good things in the status quo. And we wouldn't want to present any opposition to a good thing as inherently an awakening, right? So we can't use that criterion.
I guess, like from what I got from what Beau was saying, he was basically saying that in a specific time period there is a social order, or at least a status quo, and then the negatives of that status quo are challenged, and that changes the social order. So, for example, like in the Vietnam War, during that period, it was a status quo to accept that the Vietnam War was correct. It was the right thing to do. And then the the youngest generations were opposed to it, and they rebelled, and then that changed the social order.
Well, I mean, that's indistinguishable from saying when there are problems, people are motivated to solve them, and when they solve the problems, things change. I mean, it seems kind of a meaningless statement to make, right? There's an attempt there, implicit underneath all those things, to carve people into groups. Again, you know, like, well, see, we are awakening against them, the bad overlords. But remember that we're oppressed by two mechanisms. One, by the obliviousness of people and their willingness to not do moral thinking, so they're able and willing to follow through with behaviors that are morally unacceptable. That's one thing. So that's why you have a bunch of government employees doing a bunch of bullshit without really thinking about it at all. And then number two, it's because we have allowed protocols to be our master rather than our servant. So those are two complex issues, and it's hard to say what exactly the perfect solution for all that stuff is. But it's definitely not a this group's out to get that group kind of a thing. That's what we got to get rid of from our thinking.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
So, an interesting phenomenon there, and I think that Beau understands more clearly that he's bullshitting than some people do. Unify.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why he's doing it. I think it's because he's a debater and he's an ENTP. I don't think he likes the fact that he's a million miles away from going anywhere or accomplishing anything debate-wise, right? At the moment, he's worse off debating against me than a non-debater, because he's not doing anything that's particularly good debate-wise. He has one trick, which is shift ground, and the other supporting trick is verbosity, right? It's not a very good debate style. It sounds kind of good sometimes. You can win some rounds like that, but it's not a very good style. And if you're up against an opponent who knows exactly what you're doing, it's completely useless. He's not baffling me with any of his bullshit. That's what he requires to be doing if he's going to win that, right?
Yeah.
His strategy is completely useless against me. So, I mean, but I don't believe he believes any of that shit. He's just making arguments. He's an ENTP. He's such an ENTP that he's playing this little fucking months long now probably game of trying to convince me that he's an INTP.
Have you been in that point in your life where you just, was it when you was younger, when you just spewed out a bunch of shit that really didn't mean much?
Yeah, well, keeping in mind that my bullshit was flavored very differently because I grew up in a time when policy debate was more policy oriented. So when we debated policy, it wasn't quite so much critical theory bullshit, and it was a lot of well, if we use this means testing protocol, then we can ensure that only the proper poor people get it, and everyone just sort of accepted that stuff. You know, it was like there was less critique of the systems that we were debating about than there is now. So my bullshit tended to be a little bit more concrete, and it tended to be framed more in terms of that won't work because use of force in that foreign policy theater has a history of doing like that. It would be more like that kind of bullshit. But since I started coaching debate, now my bullshit shifted way over to the critical theory side, but the antithesis of it, like the opposite of it. I oppose it. Because it's bullshit. You heard that bullshit. Did anybody here think that was anything but pure bullshit?
Yeah, like you were asking him to explain what he was talking about. He was just bypassing it the whole entire time.
Right. But then he was saying he had already explained it to me. But what he was saying really was, I am frustrated that my bullshit isn't letting me get away from your demand to explain the thing I said before, the previous bullshit. My new bullshit is supposed to make that old bullshit irrelevant now.
The thing is, like, he bullshits and then he puts a lot of fluff on top of it.
Never really made a point. He
Right.
just said shit.
Well, I think that's important. You know, I think it's important that people realize that that's what they're doing if they can be helped to realize that. But I don't know. I don't think he ever was not realizing it. I think he's just like he doesn't even know what he's doing because he's so ENTP, but he's that age of ENTP. He's just sort of like he's spinning in his head about this shit. Anyway. That's what I'm saying. I worry about my type, right? I do. I worry about us because Beau's an example of how the ENTP develops in dramatically different ways. Even though they display kind of the same way, they develop in dramatically different ways according to the environment in which they've honed themselves. So, like, Taylor's a much more careful ENTP than me. And it's because his environment was, I think, more structured and or less nurturing. Mine was very supportive. I had a very supportive environment, with the exception of the, like, dog-eat-dog world of childhood in the neighborhood. There's a lot of, like, bullying and shit like that. But I was somewhere in the middle of that mix, you know. It wasn't like I was super picked on. I was more picked on than I was a bully, but you know, I wasn't clearly cast as victim in the way that some people were. So I kind of escaped the worst of that. Regardless, I had a pretty sheltered environment, and I display differently. I display more openly, more transparently, less carefully. Other ENTPs might display as not being particularly cautious about privacy and stuff like that. I display as actively antagonistic to it, and you know, I don't want to. I think it's a good thing to do to not hide shit. But Callum, on the other hand, I've yet to actually hear his voice or see his face because he's so cautious oriented in the chat there. That's a very different life experience that leads to that presentation versus this one versus Beau's, which is, I don't think he hung out with real rationalists. And I think those parlor tricks worked. Now, he was in debate. I don't think he debated very much at a very high level. And I don't think he debated outside of his local region, probably. Because he's showing what happens when fairly low-level tricks get rewarded by the the incompetence of the environment that is receiving them. You know, you don't want those tricks to get paid off too readily. You won't learn all the tricks you need to learn. So he's learning plenty of tricks right now, though. Or it could be like Unify says. I don't think so, but there is this one crazy guy that I interviewed that one time, and I think he's kind of crazy. And I mean, I don't want to throw the term crazy around lightly. What was that guy's name? Crazy Eastern European-y guy or whatever. Michael?
Yeah.
That guy's fucking nuts. Unless he's pulling some massive practical joke, but I'm 99% sure he's not.
Yeah, I don't think it's a practical joke.
It's because
he really is just crazy.
Yeah, he's crazy.
Wait, he's an ENTP?
I don't know what he is. He's crazy. Michael, he's like... He sort of behaves like a ENTP pantomiming an ENTP on crack.
It had my heart racing the whole interview.
Really? Was it tense to watch that?
It was. I cringed, butt cheeks just cracked all kind of break. I mean, it was hard to watch.
Did I look uncomfortable?
Wait, do you still have that video on YouTube?
Yeah, it's up there.
Yeah.
I forget what it's called, but yeah. If you search for Michael, maybe it'll pop up. Sound Vector. That's the guy's name. His YouTube channel.
Okay.
Sound Vector. Sound Vector. Now I want to watch that shit too. Yeah, I trip out on him because that was one of the ways that I came to realize and accept that, oh, you know what? People might actually think I'm crazy. Like, they might not get it. They might not get that the whole point of it is that you shouldn't... That my appearance is irrelevant. The state of my house is irrelevant. You know? That's kind of like the message. It was implicit in everything, of course. That message is implicit in my entire life. The shit that I don't like to do is irrelevant. But then I realized, but no, it's not irrelevant, and some people might actually think you're crazy. It's possible.
Oh yeah, I know this guy.
What's your diagnosis, homie? Crazy or not crazy?
Yeah, I watch one of his videos on, I think it was INTJs, and yeah, he seemed a little off to me.
Yeah, a little off.
He said he was an INTJ,
Yeah,
an INTP, and an ENTP.
An ENFJ. I think when I interviewed him, he was an ENFJ. He's constantly changing.
yeah. That's why when I saw his channel, like, I thought it was an INTJ at first, and then I saw ENFJ, and I was like, something's not right here.
He said he had the best parts of every type. It was
What a
weird.
bunch of bullshit.
He clearly does. What do you mean bullshit? Can't you tell? Can't you see his winning, his high level FI? He's got dominant slot, NE, NI, FI, FE, TITE, SIS.
But he has 4 dominant functions.
He's got 8 dominant functions. He's really, really special. It's pretty impressive.
I think that would actually make you crazy, though. It's too many functions. He's probably in a 4th dimensional level right now.
Would you be an egomaniac?
Maybe then his craziness is proof that what he's saying is true.
I mean, they do say that people who are insanely smart are usually crazy.
But see, here's the thing. He's not insanely smart because in that interview, when I started asking him things, I asked him a question. This is the question that threw him off and got him starting to turn antagonistic for a second because he thought I was arguing against him. And the question I asked was, well, because he was talking about some magic shit, I don't know. I said, well, if if it were to be some other way, if it were to be, if you were to find some evidence there that proved something else, what would that look like? And he didn't like that question at all, and said, "No, I know you like kind of. Oh, you're just." Well, he went through that sort of like attacky dismissal thing. I said, "Well, hold on there. I didn't even say anything. I just asked you a question because you said this, and then see if people can't deal with that thing. But look, you said this, and so then I asked you this question. You answered this, but doesn't that mean X?" And then they just don't want to actually address the thing that I'm talking about there. That is very frustrating, but it's also indicative of different things. Like with sound vector, I think that's indicative of crazy. With Beau, I think it's indicative of not wanting to lose. It's different. Okay, so
type is, he's definitely not an NT.
I'm sorry, say again?
Whatever his type is, he's definitely not an NT or a thinker, I think, at least.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
Maybe.
He might be actually INFJ. I think they might go crazy like that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, third.
I'm out of cigarettes, guys, so I'm gonna have to go here. I'm gonna call it an evening and upload these and then go to bed, I think, after I go get more cigarettes. So thanks for being here, and thank you at home for watching Talking with Famous People. Please don't forget to eat plenty of cheese.